To be honest, I feel like a lot of it is cognitive dissonance. Yeah, I feel... So obviously, it can be a little bit hard to feel bad for people whenever they're spreading bad ideas, harmful ideas. But I do fucking feel bad for these guys. I do feel really bad for them. Something interesting that I noticed whenever I transitioned is that a lot of my male friends, like cis guy friends, lean on me. And I can tell they're like being vulnerable with me in ways that they're not really vulnerable with their cis guy friends. I mean, like, they have told me that they feel like they can't. And, you know, like, a lot of trans guys would be really bothered by that because they're like, oh, so you don't really like see me as a guy. You know, you think you can talk to me about this stuff, but you can't talk to real guys about this stuff. Like, I get it, but doesn't really bother me that bad. But holy crap, I wish that there was more room for guys to be vulnerable. Like, cis straight dudes feel like they cannot be vulnerable at all. They close off all their feelings, and they're like horribly mentally and emotionally unhealthy, and they don't have anybody they can talk to except for like maybe one person. And usually the one person that they feel like they're allowed to talk to and open up to is usually their partner. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I didn't really like take it offensively or take it like they don't see me as a guy. I totally agree. Like, TARDIS says, I feel like you showed them that you are open with your feelings, so it's easier to share with you. Like, I'm super, very, very open about my feelings, even just like online in general, because I'm legally disabled by PTSD and depression. And so this stuff is like a daily battle for me. It's stuff that I deal with all day, every day. And I don't really get a choice in it. If I ignored it, then I die, you know? I have to go to therapy. I went through a lot of different meds. And I'm okay because of that. So I hope I'm setting a good example. I am doing a little bit better every day. I'm pretty proud of it. I mean, like, I wouldn't be able to stream right now if I wasn't doing better, because I've had a lot of diagnoses, and generalized anxiety is one of them, and holy crap, streaming is very anxiety-provoking, inducing. Good job for doing better. Getting better is so hard sometimes. Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, like, I did a intensive outpatient program, 9 hours a week of therapy. What is 9 times, how many weeks are there in the year? Like 51. It's like, let's say there's 51 weeks in a year. That's my guess. 459 hours of therapy that year, plus like individual therapy sessions and psychiatry appointments. And to be honest, this might not surprise you guys, but transition has done the most when it comes to like me getting better. Also getting in a stable, getting a stable social net. A lot of like material shit is what made me better. I did a lot of therapy too, but I'm not coming close to that. Yeah. It's been a very long journey because the first like the first 20-ish years of my life were pure fucking trauma. So it's definitely, I've been a difficult case. Yeah. And now I'm 29. And here's a good thing, right? I look really young. I don't look 29, I don't think. And that it makes me feel less behind. I was really worried about being behind. Like, oh no, I'm 29. I shouldn't have spent the last decade working on my mental health. I should have like a career and shit. I didn't really have the room to do a lot of things that everybody else was doing, like develop as a person, because I had to get stable. Can I ask you when you started getting to a better point? I'm 24, still working hard on getting better. Just curious. So I was about 23 whenever I had like a suicide attempt, and I was in the hospital for a week, Like I got picked up by an ambulance and everything, and it was like a really big deal. And I had been self-harming fairly regularly since I was like 12 years old. So I had like a lot of bad habits, a lack of coping skills, and a lot of like shitty people in my life. And so after that happened, it still didn't really register that I wasn't okay. And I still thought like, I'm 23 years old. I gotta get my life together like everybody else. I gotta finish college and have a job and stuff. And a couple months after the suicide attempt, I was like, I'm going to try to work another job. I want more money. I'm going to work another job. So I was already working another job, but like, hey, 2 jobs now. And the second job that I picked was like at Old Navy, a clothing store. And so I'd get there like early in the morning and I'd be like unpacking clothes and like starting to organize it, put it where it needs to go. And I realized that like, oh, this isn't going to work out actually. Like I'm working with a box cutter all like the entire shift. I'm cutting boxes and cutting plastic open with a razor. And with like 10 years of self-harm under my belt and just having a suicide attempt a couple months beforehand, after like 1 or 2 shifts, I just went up to the manager and I was like, hey, thanks for the opportunity, but like, I just tried to kill myself a couple months ago and I have self-harm issues and I really can't, it's not good for me to just be working with this object all day. I finally had like a little bit of self-awareness to be like, you know what? Maybe I don't need this job right now. So that was like kind of like one step toward recovery, but I still kept trying to work jobs. I started working in the state mental hospital, which is basically a prison for mentally ill people. And I worked there for about a month. Like I did all the training and it made me really, really sad. I met a lot of people who should not have been in there. Like I met a lot of people who had similar problems to me and they were denied medication. And because they couldn't get their medication, they did something terrible. That's like the kind of people who are in that prison and they're never getting out. Like almost every single person in there is going to be in there till they die. And that was really upsetting. So it also has the highest rates of workers' compensation getting taken out of like any other place to work in the state because people get injured at that job. Like people have meltdowns and stuff and they attack workers. So kind of also realized, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't work this job either. And then I kind of realized maybe I shouldn't work a job at all. And so after I quit that job, I decided I just want to work on my mental health and I don't want to work on anything else. I don't want to work a job. I don't have room for that. I don't really want to do like a lot of schooling. So it's just mental health time. So I found an intensive outpatient program, the 9 hours a week of therapy. And so I was still 23 at this point. And at the same time, whenever I quit that job and I decided like, I'm only going to work on my mental health, I'm not going to work a job, I applied for SSDI, which is like if you're disabled, you can apply for that. And hey, guess what? It's really, really hard to get on SSDI. Even if like you have a terminal illness, it can take a long time to get on SSDI. And a lot of my family, they were just like shitbags about it. When I applied for disability, I needed some witnesses, and I obviously didn't have a lot of friends. So I just figured an easy way to have some witnesses sign my paperwork that I was filling out was like, I'll just ask my grandma. Why not? I don't know. I can visit my grandma, say hi, and she can sign a little paper, and it's not a big deal, right? No, it's a terrible idea. I don't know. She freaked out. she grabbed me by my shoulders and stood between me and the door. And she started yelling at me, like, who do you think is going to take care of you your whole life? You think everybody's just going to take care of you? And she's like, no, I will not sign this paper. She got super pissed. Yeah, honestly, when it comes to a family that you cannot trust, just getting away from them a lot of the time is the only, like, good thing you can do. And it really sucks. So, like, a lot of my family is conservative. I live in a red state. And they're Catholic. And they don't like people who use welfare. So, anyways, I started the process for SSDI. And I moved in with my girlfriend, who I live with now. We've been together for like 7 years. And that made a really big difference. There's definitely been some years where we were like really broke. Because getting on SSDI, finally getting to court, it took me 2 years before they would even see me in court to appear in front of the judge. But I did eventually get it, and having financial stability, even though they only gave me $800 a month, which is not reasonable to expect a person to live on. It's made a really big difference to be like, I'm not going to be homeless, and I'm able to stay at home, and I'm not in these like customer service environments where people are screaming at me. And honestly, like, just being able to be home has made a really big difference. Another thing that made a really big difference was I tried a lot of different medications with my psychiatrist, and more than a dozen different antidepressants and a couple of mood stabilizers as well. And you would think that like that would be the answer, right? Because I've had depression for so long, but none of them actually alleviated my depression. There were like a few that I would stay on for like a year, but it was more like I stayed on them because the side effects weren't bad enough for me to quit them. So I don't know. I tried a lot of different medications and nothing really actually ended up working. I even did TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. So they put this big ass magnet on your head, and it goes burp, 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 and it makes the muscles in your head twitch. Basically, they're like zapping your brain with a magnet to see if it will help your depression, and it works for some people. And it's really funny though, because it makes like your muscles flex. And my eyebrow would be like, da, 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 da. It's really funny to watch. I legit lost some tears right now. Am I making you cry? I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to make you cry. I'm like doing a lot better. Like, it's been a long journey and it's been a lot of work. One of the worst things that happened, in my opinion, was that my therapist who did the intensive outpatient program, after like seeing her for like 2 years, I think it was closer to 3 years. Like, I thought I trusted her in general. And, I started realizing like, hey, I'm definitely trans and I need to do something about it. And so I talked to her about it because the first thing that I wanted to do, like one of the priorities on my list for medical transition, was top surgery. You can see my cool scar right here and my $10,000 nipnops, my designer nipnops. But so I did end up getting top surgery, and I'm really happy that I did. It's definitely improved my quality of life. But something really bad that happened was that a lot of surgeons will require a letter from your therapist, especially insurance will require the letter from your therapist. So I talked to my therapist and I'm like, hey, so pretty sure I'm trans, want to transition. Could I maybe get a letter from you? And she had given me letters before for stuff. She made a letter for one of my cats to be an emotional support animal. So I was able to stay in an apartment building where pets weren't allowed. And so I thought this was something she'd be able to do for me. And then instead, she was just like super invalidating. And she said to me, like, you've always been so feminine. How, like, I can't really see you as a guy. How do you know that you're a guy if you've always been so feminine? And if you guys are familiar with any of my other content, like a couple days ago, we went over a video where I showed some old pictures of me. So my therapist was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I feel comfortable writing this letter for you because you've always been so feminine. And to be fair, I always was feminine, and I'm feminine now as well. It really felt like a major like trust violation with that therapist whenever she did that. It wasn't just a one meeting thing. It wasn't just a one-time thing where that happened. She said, like, hey, if I'm going to write this letter for you, I need you to like prove to me that you have dysphoria. And I'm like, okay, I guess we could talk about it a couple of sessions. Like, it was more than one meeting. She was like, it was like 3 months of appointments. I had an appointment every week for like 3 months. And at the end of those 3 months, I was like, hey, can you please stop stringing me along? Like, I really need this letter. I want to like move on with my life. I want to get the letter. I want to get my surgery. And like, I want to move on with my life. And instead, she said something like, well, I don't think I'd feel comfortable writing the letter until we talked about this for at least 6 more months. I was very devastated by that. And I ended up getting a different therapist. Like, it took me a while to settle in to find another therapist. It took me a couple of years to find a new therapist. But Magic Skeleton said, no, it was good tears. I don't know, I'm having a rough time and I feel so alone with it, but I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. A lot of people just kind of seem to expect that you're going to be better, like, really quickly. Like, you get out of the mental hospital. They hear that you had a suicide attempt, and then you get out of the hospital, like, a week later. And then, for a couple days, maybe they'll, like, treat you a little extra nice. They might walk on eggshells a little bit. And then after that, they just, like, forget about it. Like, they've got a memory problem and they don't remember that you just tried to kill yourself a couple weeks ago. Magic Skeleton said, I had a surgeon be aggressive with me because I don't want nips when I get top surgery. There are a lot of people who, I mean, like, you're probably very aware of that, but like a lot of people are just like, fuck it, I don't want nips. I don't need them. And like, I don't know why some surgeons make that a problem. I don't know why that would be a problem. It gives them less work to do, to be honest. You'd think they'd be cool with it. But they're like, no, I only want to create normal, cis-looking bodies. Is that, like, I don't understand what the problem is. The top surgeon that I ended up going to was Dr. Scott Mosser in San Francisco. And hey, do you want to hear another sad story? I hope this doesn't make you too sad. I will complain about this until the end of the time. I'm never going to forget this. I'm going to be angry about this until I die. So I started talking to Dr. Mosser, like his surgery team, because he did not require a letter. Very good doctor. He's like genuinely like a trans ally, I guess you could say. He's cool with, like, even if you were like a cis lady and you were like, I just don't want boobs. I would like a flat chest that just give me this. He'd be like, that's cool. You're a grown up. All right, let's do this. So anyway, started talking to Dr. Scott Mosser's office. Started getting prepared for top surgery and sending information about my insurance. Really cool thing about being on SSDI, on disability, is that I was allowed to stay on my parents' like good state insurance. And that insurance, me and Dr. Scott Mosser's team, we worked really hard, put in lots of paperwork, had to do a lot of communicating with my insurance, and we got it covered. Like 80% of the surgery was going to be covered, and I was only going to have to pay 20% out of pocket. And I was like, ugh. I mean, it's still expensive. It's still, $2,000 that I was going to have to pay. But I was really excited. I was going to get to have surgery done by my dream surgeon. Only pay 20%. Hey, and then guess what happened? Are you ready? Even though I was approved to stay on my parents' insurance, forever because I'm disabled. My parents decided, I think that my 26-year-old child does not know what's best for them, and so I'm going to remove them from the health insurance during a pandemic so that I can protect them. That is what my parents did. And here's the other shit, okay? Are you ready? Here's how I found out. Yeah, they fucking did it. They're very bad people. And that was like my final straw with them. And so I didn't know about it. They didn't tell me they were doing that. And I went to pick up some of my medications at the pharmacy. And they're like, oh, you don't have insurance. And I'm like, what? Yes, I do. I totally have insurance. And they're like, no, you don't. And I'm like, oh, so like that's insurance through my parents. So like, can you contact them or something? And they're like, no, we can't. I'm like, okay. I ended up calling my dad and I'm like, hey, so they said I don't have insurance. I don't really know what's going on. My dad's like, oh, that's weird. I also do not know what's going on. I will try to call the insurance and find out. Yes. I will let you know when I find out. And then he didn't call me for like 5 days. And meanwhile, I did some investigating to figure out what the fuck was going on. And I'm like, they had to have taken me off the insurance. That's the only thing that could be happening right now. And eventually I called my dad and I'm like, you took me off the insurance. And he's like, yeah, but we did it to protect you because we don't think you know what you're doing and we don't want you to get surgery and And I mean, luckily, because I was on SSDI, I was able to get Medicare and Medicaid, but those didn't cover my top surgery. Medicare and Medicaid, you can get some trans surgeries covered by Medicare and Medicaid, but a lot of surgeons can just be like, they don't give me enough money, or I don't want to work with them, or it's out of the state, it's too much work, so nah. So anyway, I ended up having to pay for that entire surgery, $10,000 that I didn't have. I got a credit card because like I already had my surgery date set up and everything. It was going to be like in a handful of months. So instead of, pushing it off another year, finding another surgeon and having to start the process over again, I was like, I'm just going to get like a medical credit card. And yeah, my parents are just really bad people. I haven't talked to them for 2 years now because of that shit. They've, it might seem a little bit dramatic to have that reaction to your parents if it was only one thing, but I can promise you it was not only one thing. It was a very bad one thing. Taking your disabled child off of the insurance during a pandemic because they're trans. It's like kind of extremely fucked up. Magic Skeleton says, no, I get that. Me and my parents are not talking to. Yeah. My girlfriend Shiloh is also trans, and her parents aren't as bad as mine, but they're not great. Trying to hide it makes it even worse. Yeah, it did make it worse. And I don't know. It makes me a little bit sad. Everybody wants to love their parents, Like, even for people like me in situations in mine, it's not like I'm just like a resentful person and I want to like be dramatic or something. I would love to have parents that I felt like they wouldn't like fuck shit up if they had the opportunity. It's like every time they've had like an ounce of power over my life, they've done something terrible with it. So it's like the only good thing I can do when it comes to interacting with them is just kicking them out of my life 100%.